Buy a house. It's safe as brick and mortar. That's what our parents told us. Real estate is the ultimate asset. You hear it from every financial guru on TV. But what if I told you the greatest investor in history, Warren Buffett, thinks that's a terrible idea? Pause. At least for himself. Hey, what's up? You're on Money System. Today, we're not going to talk about what you should do. We're going to break down the mindset of a billionaire. At a recent shareholder meeting, an investor from China, a country where the cult of real estate is massive, asked Buffett a direct question. Warren, why are you still buying stocks instead of property? His 6-minute answer is pure concentrated wisdom about how he views deals, time, and people. I want you to see this. I've sped up the video slightly and added captions so it's easy to follow and understand. Let's watch it, and right after, I'll break down the 3 biggest secrets hidden in his words.
Good morning, Warren, Greg, and Ajit. My name is Jackie Han. I'm from China and now work in Toronto, Canada. This is my 8th Berkshire Hathaway meetings at this point. I've probably spent more time with you than most people spend on Netflix. As you might guess, coming from a Chinese family, we've always had a soft spot for real estate. So the real question isn't why don't you own a house? It's why are you still buying stocks instead of more property? So here's my question. With today's high interest rates and global uncertainty, do you still believe in being greedy when others are fearful? Or the value investing facing new challenges in today's environment? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, in respect to real estate, it's so much harder than stocks in terms of negotiation of deals, time spent, the involvement of multiple parties in the ownership. Usually when real estate gets in trouble, so you find out you're dealing with more than the equity holder. But there have been times when large amounts of real estate have changed hands at bargain prices, but usually stocks were cheaper, but they were a lot easier to do. So Charlie did more real estate. Charlie enjoyed real estate transactions, and he actually did a fair number of them in the last 5 years of his life. But he was playing a game that it was an interesting game to him. But I think if you'd asked him to make a choice when he was 21, he had to either be in stocks exclusively the rest of his life or real estate the rest of his life, he would have chosen stocks in a second. There's just so much more opportunity, at least in the United States. There's so much more opportunity that presents itself in the security market than it does in real estate. And in real estate, you're usually dealing with a single owner or a family that owns maybe a large property they've had a long time. Maybe they've borrowed too much money against it. Maybe the population trends are against them. But to them, it's an enormous decision. When you walk down to the New York Stock Exchange, you can do billions of dollars worth of business totally anonymous, and you can do it in 5 minutes. And the trades are complete when they're complete. In real estate, when you make a big deal with a distressed lender, when you sign the deal, then you go into another phase. I mean, then people start negotiating more things, and it's a whole different game. And a different type of person, to some extent, enjoys the game. We did a few real estate deals that came our way in 2008 and 2009, but the amount of time that they would take us compared to doing something intelligent and probably better in securities, there was just no comparison. I mean, in a real estate deal, every sentence is as important to the person, and in stocks, if somebody needs to sell 20,000 shares of Berkshire or something, and they call us and the price is right, it's done in 5 seconds, and it closes all the time. People who you certainly wouldn't want to have marry your daughter, or they behave well, actually, in stocks. Partly that's because they're probably having their wires or phones or whatever it is recorded as to what they've said and everything. but the completion rate for working on anything in stocks is, assuming you've got a meeting of the minds on prices, essentially 100%. In real estate, it just begins when you agree on deals, and they take forever. So for a guy 94, it's not the most interesting thing to get involved in something where the negotiations could take years. We have the capability. There have been some huge failures in fact, if you go all the way back to Zeckendorf in the 1960s, he was going to change the world, and Century City out in California is a product of his. And if you go to Eurus, he was sitting on top of the world with the Eurus buildings. And so people tend to get in trouble in that business The banks usually don't want to recognize it, but that takes a long time to go through the bank processes. They just got through redoing the Musk loan that he did when he was buying it 3 years ago, the company that's now X. And, 3 years to work out a transaction that, where you've got parties on both sides that aren't ready to act. That we find it much better when people are just ready to pick up the phone and you can do hundreds of millions of dollars worth of business in a day. I've been spoiled, but I like being spoiled, so we'll keep it that way.
Welcome back. Did you catch that? He was asked 2 questions, but he completely ignored the second one about fear and greed and spent all 6 minutes just on real estate. Buffett isn't just comparing 2 assets here. He's comparing 2 ways of life. Let's break down his 3 main points with real-world examples to understand why he calls it a different game. Buffett says, on the New York Stock Exchange, you can do billions of dollars worth of business in 5 minutes. Let's put that in terms we can relate to. Imagine you have $1 million. If you want to invest it in stocks, say Apple or the S&P 500, you open your brokerage app, hit buy, and you're an owner in 1 second. Done. You can be sitting on your couch in your pajamas. No one even knows you just made a transaction. Now try to buy an apartment building or a commercial property for that same $1 million. You're talking calls with realtors, property tours, inspections, title searches, lawyers, getting financing approved, and a closing process that drags on for 30, 60, or 90 days. Buffett manages hundreds of billions. If he wanted to buy a skyscraper, it would take a team of lawyers 6 months. He can buy the same value in Apple stock before lunch. For him, time is the most expensive asset, and real estate just eats it alive. The second point is what Buffett called going into another phase, after you sign the deal. Look, when you buy a share of stock, you're buying a standardized piece of a business. My share of Apple and Tim Cook's share of Apple are identical. They don't need repairs, the pipes don't leak, and the neighbors don't complain. All the company's problems are listed in a public 10K report you can download in a second. In real estate, every single property is a potential can of worms. Example: you agree on a price for a building, you sign the deal, and that's when the hell begins. The inspection finds a crack in the foundation. The main tenant on the first floor refuses to leave or is late on rent. You find out there's a lien on the property. You have to renegotiate every little thing. Buffett says, in a real estate deal, every sentence is important. He doesn't want to spend his mental energy arguing about who's responsible for fixing the roof in 5 years. In stocks, that problem just doesn't exist. This is the funniest but most important point. Buffett jokes about dealing with people you wouldn't want your daughter to marry. Here's the bottom line. The stock market is anonymous. When you sell shares of Tesla or Exxon, you don't care who buys them. You don't care what mood they're in, if they're getting a divorce, or if they're just a jerk. The market is just a machine that matches prices. In real estate, you are always dealing with a specific person. Imagine trying to buy a great piece of land, but the seller is the family that's owned it for 50 years. For them, it's not a transaction, it's emotional. My grandpa planted that tree. We can't sell for less. We need the money for our granddaughter's wedding. You become a hostage to their problems, their greed, or their stupidity. Buffett calls this negotiations that could take years. He's an investor, not a family therapist. It's just easier to buy part of a business from a faceless market than to sweet-talk a stubborn landowner. So, what's the takeaway? Buffett isn't saying you can't make money in real estate. Of course you can. As he mentioned, his partner Charlie Munger actually enjoyed those deals. But Buffett chooses the path of least resistance. His philosophy is classic. Why try to jump over a 7-foot bar, real estate with all its problems, when you can step over a 1-foot bar, the stock market, and get the same or even better results? He chooses the game with the highest efficiency for his time and money. And maybe that's a lesson we can all learn from. What's closer to you? The concrete you can touch but have to wrestle with? Or the numbers on a screen that give you freedom but require nerves of steel? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you like this breakdown, smash that like button and subscribe to Money System. We're all about thinking rationally here. See you in the next one.